What if I told you that you could design and live the life that you want on your own terms? Would you do it? Would you take a leap into the unknown? Or would you settle for a life of limits, a life of safety but lacking true meaning? Zephan Moses Blacksburg here, and I'm on a journey to help you ignite your inner passions, let go of your fears, and get more out of life. Will you join me and make this year your year of purpose? Welcome to the Year of Purpose podcast. What's up, Year of Purpose podcast fans? Zephan Blacksburg back again for another episode, and today I have the pleasure to introduce you to David Mead. Now, David works with leaders to help them create an environment where people show up to work because they want to, not because they have to. An environment where they feel safe and that they belong. In 2009, David partnered with Simon Sinek, a world-renowned thought leader, and now travels internationally helping organizations shift their perception around why they exist, what leadership really looks like, and how our human biology plays into it all. So please welcome David. What's going on today, man?
Hey, man. Good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. So, let's just kind of jump right in. I saw that you work on the podcast Start With Why. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So I guess let's start there. My big point in creating this podcast was kind of like discovering my why, learning my why, and kind of sharing other people's stories with everyone else. So where does that all begin? Like, where does the foundation for figuring out who we are and why we're doing things start?
Well, I think it's a little bit different for everybody, but as you mentioned, as I've been working with Simon Sinek for the last few years, and he came up with just a very simple concept called the golden circle, which I'll just briefly for your listeners who may not be familiar with it. Basically, every organization and even our own careers operate on three levels: what we do, how we do it, and why we do it. And individually or as organizations, we're usually really good at talking about what we do and how we do it, how we're different than somebody else or better or special or whatever. And we're obviously clear on what we do. It's the products we sell, the service we offer, the title that we hold. But very few individuals and very few organizations really understand, or more importantly, can clearly articulate or talk about why they do what they do. And so the why really comes from, and let's go to the individual basis, because really the why is an individual pursuit. Why really comes from our past experience. So it's not that you sit in a room and you think, okay, so who do I want? It's not aspirational. It's not who do I want to be? It's not what do I want to do with my life? It's looking at your past and just looking at past experiences where you have felt at your best, where you felt the most fulfilled, where you felt like you were doing something on purpose. And it's basically getting the specifics of those stories and those experiences and those events, and figuring out what is the common thread in all those things. What is it that ties all those things together? What are the commonalities? What were the things that were always going on? Who were the type of people that were always around me? What was the contribution I was making in every single one of those situations that made me feel like I was really at my best, like I was really doing something that was more of a calling than anything else? And so when we can find that pattern among those specific events or those specific stories, that's really where the seed of the why comes from. It's figuring out, in what sort of situations do we need to place ourselves in order to feel at our best? What sorts of things do we need to be doing so that we feel like we're the most fulfilled? And then when we figure that out and we can clearly articulate that and start to talk about it, then we can project that into the future and say, okay, so now that I know what it takes for me to be fulfilled or for me to act at my best, now I know which situations to put myself in. I know what types of people to surround myself with. I know what to avoid. And that's really where I think it all starts. It's just sort of that self-discovery of not thinking about, again, what do I hope to become, but who am I, and what are the things in my life that have made me the most fulfilled. Figure out what that stuff is, and then put myself in more of those situations going forward.
So it's interesting that you bring this up, because this was, kind of a process that I had actually gone through fairly recently for everybody listening. For a good majority of my life, video was my thing, right? So like I went to school for video. I worked in a video job after I got out of school. I now run a video production business. But I had this moment actually last year where I was like, well, video isn't really, like, I was trying to figure it out. Is video what I love because everybody's like, oh my gosh, you're so amazing, you do really good work?
Yeah.
Or was it because I really loved it? And I came to the answer of, like, I really liked it because a lot of people thought that I was good at it, and I couldn't quite piece out what it really was about doing it that I enjoyed. And through telling my story, through sharing a lot more with people over the last couple of years, actually very recently, like a couple months back, I was in my business mastermind group and I was telling some story, and all of a sudden the person leading the group just like had a light bulb moment. She was like, "You like telling stories.
Mm.
It's not that you like video, you like storytelling."
Mm-hmm.
And everything just clicked into place from there. So it's so neat how, you ask yourself this question of like, what is it? And you're trying to figure it out and you get so frustrated in it.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's way simpler than you even think.
Well, and I think you bring up a perfect example of, again, going back to this idea of Simon Sinek's golden circle: why in the middle, how, and then what on the outside. And video just happens to be one of your whats. And because the what is easy to see, it's easy to measure, it's easy to talk about, sometimes we just get pigeonholed into that what. We think we are a video guy or an accountant or a whatever. And so that's all we can think about. But really, when you can look at the broader picture, the higher cause or purpose, the thing that really drives you, which for you is telling stories, video is one of the things that you can do. A podcast is another thing that you can do. Who knows what else you can open up yourself to? And there's a great example, I think, which is the Virgin Companies with Richard Branson, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, yeah, he started in music, and then now he's got, I don't know how many hundreds of companies, and not all of them have been successful.
Right.
But he got into train travel, space travel, soft drinks, fitness clubs, banking. I mean, all these variety of different things, and you think, good night, man. Like, can't you figure out like what your core business is, like what you want to do? But the thing is he doesn't define himself by what he does. He defines himself by why he exists, which is to change the lives of millions of people for good and to have fun while doing it. So with that perspective, he can do all kinds of different whats, and it all makes sense because the why is what gives your what's meaning or context.
Yeah, that's very true. And a lot of people probably have trouble getting there. They get there eventually, some people faster than others, but I'm sure plenty of people you probably see all the time make the mistake of saying, you're like, well, why do you like doing this? And they're just like, well, I'm an accountant, or I'm whatever. You probably see this all the time, right?
Yeah, I mean, and the easiest thing to jump to when you ask people, so why do you do what you do, or what do you enjoy about your job? Oh, I make a good paycheck, I get good benefits. Really, I mean, you could do that anywhere. I mean, you can make more money somewhere else. You could get great benefits somewhere else. What is it about? If there's something that you really love, it's about more than that. The reason that we talk about the money and the benefits or the things that first come out of our mouths is because that's the most obvious stuff. Those are sort of the manifestations of something bigger, but it's hard to talk about because another thing that Simon mentions is that the why comes from the part of our brain that does not control language. It controls feelings and beliefs, which is what a why is, but it doesn't control language. And so it's hard to talk about why we do what we do, which is why we so often resort back to the what and the how. And so when you say, why do you do what you do? Well, to make money. Well, no, I mean, yes, you need money to live, but it's really more than that. I mean, if your why is really to make money, so you're going to make a ton of money, what are you going to do? Like roll around in it? I mean, money is just a result. It's not why we do what we do.
Right. And you actually kind of answer the next question I was going to bring up there is like, why do so many people misconstrue money for like what brings on the happiness? A lot of people are like, oh, well, like you said, they get these benefits, they get this paycheck, and this is why they're happy. And it's not at all. It's just that these are kind of like the vessel to their why, almost like the medium in which it travels on. Same thing for this podcast. It could come out on YouTube, it could come out on iTunes, it could come out, in an MP3 form somewhere else, but the message still is behind it all. So I think that's really great that to know that our brain doesn't really process turning our why into natural language when we're speaking. That's something that's really important for me to understand now too, and thanks for sharing that. Now, wanted to bring up a little bit about kind of how you got to where you are now. Just kind of curious, we were talking before we jumped on this call that you kind of have a similar background to me. We both worked at the Apple Store at some point in time, and that was kind of like our in-between. So I'm curious if maybe someone went and did research, like, are all these people leaving the Apple Store and going on to do really great things? Who knows? They're all very creative people. But maybe just share with me a little bit about how you got to where you are now and what your why is.
Sure. So yeah, as you mentioned, I went through some stuff in my life. Things kind of blew up, and I ended up finding myself at the Apple Store, which was great. I loved it. Worked with a lot of great people there, and I usually don't tell this part of the story, but and you can edit it out if you need to. But I was walking to the back room after my shift was over one day, and I was just sort of talking to myself, as we often do and don't realize. And as much as I love working there, and I love the people, and I love the environment, I couldn't afford it. I had a wife and a brand new baby, and I couldn't. They couldn't take me on full time. I was working part time at the time, and it just wasn't working out. And so I kind of said under my breath to myself, I was like, I really need to find another job. And a buddy of mine heard me, and he said, "Hey, my best friend just started this new company, and basically what they do is like door-to-door summer sales. Like, I don't know if you guys have it out where you live, but they go door-to-door and sell pest control or
Yeah.
with that garbage." So he was like, you can make a ton of money in a summer, and maybe it's just enough. You'll have to do it for 3 months, make enough money to kind of hold yourself over till you find something else. And I was like, I hate sales. That's why I loved Apple, because their sales model is different than everybody else's. And I'm not that good at it. And so, but I was like, oh, yeah, I was kind of desperate. And so I went to this company and I talked to this guy, and they happened to find out a little bit about my background, which is corporate training. And, I was a little more qualified, I think, than to do door-to-door sales, which I was willing to do, by the way. But they said, based on your qualifications and stuff, we actually needed somebody to run our training here. So we'll hire you on to do that. And I was like, great. So about a week after I started, they told me that they were going to have an event and they were going to have a speaker come in. And so I was like, okay, cool. So I showed up to the event, and the speaker happened to be Simon Sinek.
Nice.
And this was before anybody knew who he was. He didn't have his TED Talks or books or anything else yet. This was back in 2009. And I heard Simon speak, and he shared this message about why and the golden circle and stuff. And if you're interested, the TED Talk is it's the third most downloaded TED Talk of all time. But anyway, I heard this and I was like, holy cow. And it's not like it was anything new. Like it was something I understood, but the way he put it into words so simply was what really hit me. And so I took this idea of higher cause or purpose, and showing up to work because you want to, not because you have to, and showing up to contribute to something bigger than yourself, and all that stuff. And I basically wrote it down, and I put it into a training manual that I was writing.
Nice.
And so Simon came back into town a couple months later, and I gave him a copy of it just to show him what he had inspired. And he called me and he was like, dude, you heard me speak for 45 minutes and you turned it into that? And I was like, yeah, I guess. And so he asked me to come and help him while I was kind of on the side, while I was still working for this other company. He asked me to come and help him put together the online Why Discovery course, which is now on his website, which has gone through several iterations since then, which makes it much, much better than it was the first go around. But helped him with that. And then the little company that I was working for, actually, they didn't get it. They didn't. So what I was trying to implement there, what I was trying to get them to do, and the culture I was trying to help them build, they weren't all that interested. And so they said, you know what, we don't really need you anymore. And so they let me go. So this gave me the opportunity to go work with Simon full time, which was awesome. And that's kind of where all this started. So to answer your second question, which is what my why is, and it took me a while to figure it out. My why is to propel positive change so that people can progress toward the things that really matter. Which is why my company is called Propel.
That's awesome.
So, yeah.
So you obviously have had some pretty amazing experiences that have led to this point. It's neat that I'm hearing a common denominator between a lot of people in that, you kind of just found yourself in a room with him, and this is how things get connected. It's really cool for everyone listening. We had a podcast recording with Eric James, who found himself in a room with Sir Richard Branson, and actually is going to be the first photographer in space on the
cool.
On the space flights with him. So
nice.
It's funny how this stuff works. A lot of people think that, I can never get in touch with this person, or there's no way that I could, do what I really want to do. And it's like, the magic really happens when you just kind of put it out there and land in the same room as them, and you just show them that you're a hard worker and that you're doing amazing things.
Yeah, and that's the key right there, which is there's a distinction that we talk about, which is the difference between causing something to happen and allowing something to happen. And I saw this for a couple of years, because when I first came on with Simon full time, I was doing a lot of the communication stuff. I was handling all the emails that came in and whatever. And we had so many people that said, oh, I'm so inspired by what you're doing. Would love to come work with you. Do you have any jobs available? Right? And there were other people, and I began to notice that the only people, and we're a very small team still, we're a pretty small team, about 11 people. But even back then, we were 4 or 5 people at most. And what I just kind of picked up on is that every single person that was currently on the team or who has been on the team since is not somebody who said, hey, I'm really inspired. What can I do to help? It was somebody who was just on their own saying, hey, I love that. I'm just going to do it on my own. And we found out about it and we said, hey, come do it with us. And so rather than trying to cause something to happen, meaning how am I going to be able to get in the room with this person so that I can ask them if I can help, just do it. You don't need their permission, you know? And we call what we're doing, what Simon's work is. Simon has started a movement. And a movement doesn't mean that you have to be on the team of the leader of the movement. Just do it. I mean, if something inspires you, just do it. Independent of the leader. You don't need him or her. So, and if the leader happens to notice that you're doing something great and they say, hey, you know, we would love to work together, awesome. But when things are meant to happen, allow them to happen. Don't try to cause them to happen. It just doesn't work.
So,
at least that's what I found.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I mean, we're seeing this happen over and over again with lots of other people. So it's one of those things where it's kind of hard to back by like science and data, but it's like you just kind of have to trust in it and have a little bit of faith that things are going to work out, and you know, keep doing what you're doing, especially if you believe in it, because if you believe in it, that's where it's really going to go far.
Totally.
Now, so once we kind of figure out this why and we can at least clearly put it into words, is there some sort of model or maybe just some tips or advice that we should take for getting started? Because a lot of people get wrapped up in the bigger picture of like, here's why I want to do this. Here's the big change that I want to see in the world. Obviously, I can't just wake up tomorrow morning and everything is going to be sunshine and daisies. So is there anything that we can do to kind of like make sure that we follow through with breaking this down into little steps or planning this out? Kind of like how you took what Simon said and, you know, slowly created this, I guess, manual in a sense of how to do that.
Yeah, and that's a longer conversation, but I'll give you a couple of simple things. So just to give some context, the manual that I wrote was pretty much just a sales training manual. So if you want to learn how to sell based on why, read that. If you want to learn how to live your entire life or pursue your career or whatever it is based on why, the first step that we always tell people, and it's the simplest thing. It's not easy, but it's the simplest thing that you can do, where most people fall short, is talk about it, communicate it. Right? If you can, and the reason most people don't talk about it or don't communicate it is because they don't understand it clearly enough to be able to talk about it. So, step one, obviously, find out what it is. There are a couple of different ways that you can do that. Once you know what it is and you can start to articulate it, talk about it, blog about it. Tweet about it. I mean, just start talking about it. And as you start to tell people what you believe, as you start to tell them about the world that you imagine or the thing that you're working toward, you will inspire other people who believe in the same thing, who want to help you get there, and you will naturally attract other people who share your common values and beliefs. Alone, you're not going to be able to do anything great. None of us can, right? But when we talk about it, when we can begin to attract other people who believe what we believe and who want to help us build the world that we imagine, together we can accomplish anything. And so just start talking about it, even though it's not perfect, even though it takes practice. It's like riding a bike, right? You're not going to be great at it at first. I'm still practicing, you know, how to talk about my why and how to articulate it and how to bring it to life so that it inspires other people. It's hard. It's not an easy thing to do. But the more you do it, just like riding a bike, the more practice you get, the easier it becomes. A couple other things that I can throw in there just as a couple of tips is every decision that you make will either get you closer to your why or farther away from it. So when you're going to make a career decision or when you're going to make a decision to hire somebody or you're going to make a decision to partner with somebody, always go back to your why and use it as a filter and ask yourself the question, is this decision going to get me one step closer to the world I imagine or one step farther away from it? So just start using your why as a filter for every decision that you make.
That makes perfect sense. I imagine that some people should kind of print this out and have it on their desk or something so that you can look back to it every day.
Absolutely. Put it somewhere where you'll always see it. There's also a really powerful thing, which is symbols. I have a propeller on my desk.
Nice.
which reminds me to propel positive change every time I look at it, right? So if there's a symbol or something that you can have handy, symbols are really handy because they trigger in our minds, they remind us of things. So yes, have the words up there, but also if you can find a symbol of some kind, that's really helpful too.
It's funny that you say that. So for the longest time when I was working to overcome a lot of my issues with anxiety and depression, I actually used to keep a paracord bracelet on, this black paracord bracelet. You know, nobody saw it and said, oh, what does that mean? You know, it's just kind of like an accessory piece. And it was something great because I had it on me at all times. And often people wouldn't notice this, but if I was feeling anxious, I would actually like play with it or unclip it and clip it back on, and just kind of like, it was a nice thing to have on me almost as a totem so that I could come back to, you know, like they would say in yoga, so I could come back to my breath or come back to my heart center. And so it's really cool that you have that. I'm actually thinking maybe I should probably get something for myself because I don't have that anymore. And it would be cool to have something like that. So thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, sure.
Now, once you start sharing what you want to do, because, and I've had this talk with quite a few people now, they get this brilliant idea, you know, and whether it's they share it with their parents or they share it with their friends, there's going to be naysayers, right? Like there's going to be people without a doubt that will say that, oh, this will never work, or, oh, no, you can never accomplish this. So how do we go about not getting discouraged when that happens? Because it's bound to happen.
Sure. Well, let me ask you this. There were plenty of people that said we would never land on the moon. There were plenty of people that said that there would never be horseless carriages. I mean, pick your innovation, right? I mean, there have always been naysayers, and the people that actually went through and actually invented anything or came up with anything of any worth ignored the people that said it couldn't be done, right? The point is not to try to convince everybody that your idea is great or that you know, the world that you imagine is going to happen. The point is to surround yourself with people that do believe it's going to happen. Surround yourself with those people. Who cares what everybody else thinks? If it's something that you believe in, go for it. And it's easy to say, you know, when we're having a conversation, a little harder to do in practice, but right. Ignore it. It's like, it's almost like, you know, and often we do this to ourselves. We come up with this great idea and we think, oh, that'll never work. Why not? Right? Ask yourself, why wouldn't it work? Maybe it wouldn't work with the current knowledge or the skills or the abilities that we have, but even more important than to communicate what the world is that we imagine, bring on more people who want to bring that world together and get 10 minds working on it rather than just our one mind, because they might have great ideas we never would have thought of that can actually make it come to be, you know?
Yeah, and it probably goes back to that quote. I'm probably going to butcher this, but it's something along the lines of, whether you think you can or you can't, you're right.
Right. Totally. Henry Ford, yeah.
Yeah, and surrounding yourself, you know, you are also the average of the people that you surround yourself with. So, yep. You know, maybe that means you might have to vocalize it to 100 people, even if there's just 3 people that believe in it. You better start talking to those 3 people a lot more, right?
Yeah, and I mean, it goes in line with the message that that I share. You know, again, based on Simon's work, which is some of the people in the room that I speak to don't get it. They think I'm an idiot. That's okay, but if we're inspiring everybody else, cool. Like, I think Apple is a great example, which is that they don't have the largest market share. Right, they're fairly small in the computer market, at least. Apple doesn't really care if you buy their computer or not. They are more interested in surrounding themselves with people who believe what they believe, who are interested in creativity, about, you know, kind of expressing themselves, this individual expression and that kind of thing. That's what's important to them. If you believe in that and you want to come and join Apple and be part of that family and buy their products, awesome. If you don't, they don't really want you anyway, because you're just kind of going to muddy up the waters. Don't worry about the people who don't want what you want. Go after the people that do. Right?
Exactly. And so one of the things that I think you've shared about when you talk in the past is building this sense of trust and authenticity, you know, when you are doing this. So what are some things we can do to make sure that, or to just help people along in trusting us and trusting what we're after?
2 main things come to mind. One is tell the truth. You know, I mean, it's again, it's a simple thing, sometimes not easy, because we most of us don't flat out lie to people, but we bend the truth. We tell little white lies, right? We sort of sugarcoat things a little bit. Don't do it. I mean, it's just there's no better way to present your authenticity than to just tell the truth. And it takes practice, and it's tough, right? Because when your girlfriend says, "Hey, do these jeans make me look fat?" What are you going to say? There are ways around it. You can say, "I like the other ones better," right? Just tell the truth. The second thing has temporarily slipped my mind, but hopefully it'll come back.
Okay.
What was it? So people can, we can build trust. Don't, and this kind of goes along with being honest, but don't pretend like you know everything. Don't pretend like you're good at everything. Nobody's good at everything, right? Admit what you suck at. Don't admit that everything is fine when it's not in a work situation or whatever it is, right? If we don't trust people who have all the answers, right? If you have if we have an acquaintance or somebody in every conversation that we come up, they know everything about that subject. There's something weird about it. I mean, they clearly don't. We don't trust people that know everything.
Yeah.
So admit what you're not good at. Admit what you are good at. And the interesting thing is, most of the things that we're not good at, we don't really like to do. So if we pretend that we're good at everything, or we tell people that we're good at everything, they'll ask us to do everything. And then we'll hate half the stuff we do because we're not good at it, really. So if we tell people what we are really good at, tell people what we're not so great at, they'll have us do more of the stuff that we're good at, and they'll get somebody else to do the stuff that we suck at.
That's a really good point in being honest. And I mean, and for your own happiness too. I mean, obviously you don't want to do the things that you're bad at because you're going to dread it all the time. And
right.
At the end of the day, you should really be doing whatever's going to have you happy at the end of the day,
Yeah. Yeah.
So let's, real quick, just to round this off, let's go back to the golden circle. This is rooted in human biology. This is not something that someone just put down on paper and said, this is how it works. Like, this biologically is how our bodies function, right?
Right. Let me, just so we can make it a little more visual for people, I'll just jot it down real quick. This is the beauty of Simon's ideas. They're simple enough, you can just put them on a napkin.
Nice. And for those of you guys listening right now, we will have this video up on YouTube and on our site, so you can come check this out to actually see this.
Okay. Sorry, I can't see my camera now. Can you see that?
Yeah, man.
Okay, so golden circle is pretty simple. Bullseye, why, how, and what, right? So biologically, and I mentioned this a little bit before, and I'll touch on it again here, but if you take a cross-section of our brain and compare it to that golden circle, it matches up perfectly. So if you look at our brain from the side angle, right, the outer section of the brain that corresponds with that what level of the golden circle, which I just dropped, is the neocortex, right? This part out here. This is the part of the brain that controls all of our rational thinking, our intellect, our ability to process facts and figures and features and benefits and all that logical stuff. And it also controls our language. The center two sections of the brain that correspond with the why and the how level of the golden circle is the limbic system. And this is the part of the brain that controls all of our feelings, like trust, loyalty, love, all the other ones. It's responsible for all of our decision-making, all of our behavior, but it doesn't control language. So this is why the why is difficult to talk about, because it comes from a part of the brain that controls those feelings or those beliefs, but it doesn't control language. So the thing that we usually do is we default to what we do and how we do it, because that's where language lives, right, is in the what. And so it's easy to talk about what we do, but it's really hard when, emotional questions are tough to answer, right? Why do you love your girlfriend? I don't know. Really? put that on her birthday card.
Yeah.
See how she likes that, right? And so so we push a little harder, right? Come on. Tell me, why do you love your girlfriend? Why do you love your boyfriend? I don't care who it is. Okay, well, she's fun. She's
you start to go with everything that's on the surface.
Right. The first things that come out, right? Fun, smart, I can trust her. We spent tons of time together. She's like my best friend. Great. Sounds like a dog, right? Really, it's like you just described the same characteristics that a really nice golden retriever might have.
Yeah.
So why do you love your girlfriend? Well, I don't know. I don't know. I can't just, she completes me. Seriously? Like, what does that even mean? Right? Nobody
Right.
knows what that means. So what we're attempting to do is to try to put these feelings that we have for another human being into words from a part of the brain that controls those feelings, but does not control the language. And so there's a disconnect. And so we struggle with it. So most organizations and most people start with what? Because that's easy to talk about. Why we feel, I mean, we get it. Like when we work for ourselves or when we work for an organization where we feel like we belong, where we feel like it's a family, where we feel fulfilled, we know what that feels like. But if you ask us to put that into words, it's really hard to do.
Yeah.
Not impossible, just really hard.
Right. So, I mean, it takes work, it takes time, it takes vocalizing, what you really want to do.
Yeah,
And, for everyone listening, that this won't happen overnight. And it's perfectly okay that this won't happen overnight because
sure.
it's about the journey to get there. And once you figure it out, things are going to be pretty darn amazing after that point.
Hmm.
Um,
And you bring up a good point too about it not happening overnight. This is a process, and I think especially for younger folks, and I'm slowly slipping away from that demographic. Um, but I'm kind of on that bridge. But for especially for millennials, uh, there is such a pull for immediate gratification, right? Where, I mean, if you want to watch a movie, get online and watch a movie. If you want to talk to a friend, text them, they'll text you back. If you want to instantly feel better about yourself, jump on Facebook, see how many people have liked your post, right? I mean, we get this instant gratification, anything we want. I mean, you want to buy something, get on Amazon, you can get it the next day. It's like instant gratification for everything. And so often I think we get into our own businesses or we work for an organization, and if we don't advance in 3 months or we don't find that fulfillment in a week, we think, oh, this just isn't working. I got to go find something else. You can't rush biology. You can't rush these things. Some of these things are just a process. Um, it's a human thing, and it takes time. It takes time to build the relationships that you need to build that trust, to move up in an organization, to be trusted by your leaders. It takes time to get your customers to trust you if you're running your own business, and you don't have crowds of customers flocking to you overnight. It just takes time. Trust is not something you can like. It's not instant. This is a process, and you just have to be comfortable with that and okay with it.
Yeah, and with that instant gratification thing, it's actually, we have to be careful because it's getting worse. Now they just opened up from Amazon in my zip code. I can order from like 25,000 items and have it delivered to my house in 2 hours. And for an extra $10, if I'm on the toilet and I'm out of toilet paper, within an hour, they will deliver another thing of toilet paper for an extra $10. So, and they just released this other thing the other day where it's like these buttons now where like if you ran out of dishwasher detergent, you can have a button on your dishwasher, and when you hit it, it automatically orders you whatever like detergent you have listed in your Amazon
Wow.
to be shipped to
Wow.
you. So I think we really have to be careful with that because we're going to be battling that in the future when it comes to doing things like discovering our why, because we're going to expect something to happen within an hour or two, and it's probably going to take a year or two, if not
Right.
more.
Right.
So
Yeah.
this has been really great talking to you. I'm sure we could go on and on about this, but I'd love to share with everybody listening. Is there some websites for people to check out, some resources for them to look at, and maybe if you have the link for your podcast so people can check you out?
Sure. So my website is propel-inc.com. You can get a lot of information also from Simon's website, startwithwhy.com, startwithwhy.com. Simon has 2 books out, which are just incredible. The first one is Start With Why. The second one is called Leaders Eat Last. The link to the podcast, you can find it. It's just called the Start With Why podcast. You can find it in iTunes or on Stitcher Radio as well. I think that's it, and I'm sure you'll put those in links on your podcast as well.
Yeah, man. So, hey, thanks so much for being here today. Just so everyone knows who's listening, watching this, all those links will be listed on our website, www.yearofpurpose.com, along with the transcript. If you like this episode, don't forget to hit subscribe and leave us a friendly review. Thanks so much for being here, David. It's been really great, and I can't
you're
wait
welcome.
to talk to you again.
Thank you.
You've probably heard me talk about designing a life that you actually want to live. You might have even heard about my travels or experiences and thought to yourself, yeah, I do want to do that. Eventually, someday I'll probably do it, and my guess is that you've been thinking about doing it for a long time. So I want to tell you this: stop thinking. Your time is right now. You don't need any more time, you don't need any more info. You don't need to keep putting it off and planning for the perfect time, because the truth of the matter is this: you could be the person who sits around and thinks about living a better life, or you can be the person that decides that today is the day that you're going to actually do it, and I want that for you. Because you already have what it takes. You've got a fire inside. Even if you can't see it right now, it's lit, but you need to open yourself up to the possibilities and throw a couple logs into the flames. So join me and the Year of Purpose tribe by subscribing to our YouTube channel and iTunes podcast. And if you really like us, please leave a review. This is Zephan Moses Blacksburg, and I can't wait to see you again on the Year of Purpose podcast.